very meaningful for me in a very meaningful place. This is a church that I spent my childhood in, and I'm thrilled to see some familiar faces here today, and I'd like to say hello to those of us joining remotely. Hello. And I'd like to start by just telling you a little bit about me. And my talk today is about the Convictions Alternatives program that I work with. And the title of it is Show Up, Be Honest, and Try. So I graduated from UC Santa Cruz with a double major in politics and legal studies. I hold a Master of Science in Criminal Justice with an emphasis on the intersection of mental health and the criminal legal system. I'm a paralegal with the Federal Public Defender in San Francisco and have been there since 2008, which makes me older than I'd like to admit. Started there in my 20s. In addition to my trial caseload duties, I coordinate social services referrals for clients, and I'm on the team for the Conviction Alternatives program, which I will call CAP, just for ease, which is what I am here to talk to you about today. So, what is CAP? CAP is a 12 to 18-month alternative sentencing program broken into 4 phases that meets every 2 weeks. We have courts in San Francisco, in Oakland, and in San Jose. We are a needs-based treatment court that relies on a team approach to do our work, and the team consists of all the major court stakeholders. So we have the federal district court judges and magistrate judges. We have the United States Attorney, pretrial services, which is our supervising body, and the Federal Public Defender. We're also supported by a collaborative courts director, and we also have our own dedicated substance use counselor on the team. To get into the CAP pipeline, you first need to be charged with a federal case. Then you receive a referral for evaluation from a district court judge. You're then screened by a licensed clinical social worker at pretrial services for individualized risk factors to meet our program's specific criteria. Then the participant must plead guilty to the charged offenses, but the sentence remains pending until if and when the participant completes our program. And so just to give you a little bit of an idea of the most common offenses that our participants are charged with, overwhelmingly the first is drug offenses, followed closely by weapons offenses, and then property and fraud-related crimes. The only exclusions are for those who are charged with sex offenses or are unfortunately in immigration custody that prohibits participation. Acceptance into our program is reserved only for those who are highest need and at the highest risk for reoffending and whose criminal conduct is driven by addiction or a moderate to severe clinically diagnosed substance use disorder. Our aim is very much to rebuild lives with intensive supervision, increased resources and support, and a cognitive behavioral therapy group that is administered by our on-staff therapist called Courage to Change. And this behavioral therapy group is a group that consists only of the participants, and it's to help support each other and also to facilitate some changes in decision-making and sobriety support. At every admission interview, our team asks every participant to say, can you show up, be honest, and try? Those are our guiding principles to achieve success in the program and as well as cultivating lasting personal change. Now, the importance of the peer group cannot be overstated. It offers support, it also offers accountability, it builds trust in each other and in the team. It's to try and create a sense that something good can happen in a courtroom, which I don't think anyone here would say anything good has ever happened in a courtroom. Well, imagine if it was happening to you. So this is a stark departure intentionally to try to bring all of us down out of the various towers we live in and to sit at a table and to work together. Successful completion of the program culminates in a graduation ceremony attended by participants' friends, families, communities, the federal court, and is typically rewarded with a non-custodial sentence by our district court judge. Throughout the program, participants are expected to maintain their sobriety, participate in any individual or group treatment, attend all court sessions, remain crime-free, and show substantive steps towards individualized change, such as sustaining employment, working on family reunification, attending school, or other positive goals. Okay, so why CAP? Well, our participants are most likely to fail in the normal criminal justice system. They have very complex needs, they have a very specific set of risk factors, and they would most likely receive lengthy prison sentences. Our participants experience higher incidences of trauma, incarceration, mental health disorders, including those that concur with substance use and addiction. And why is that important? Well, let's talk numbers for a minute. Approximately half the people in US jails and over 1/3 of the population of US prisons have been diagnosed with a mental health disorder. And that is from a statistic from 2020, and I imagine with the pandemic, those numbers have likely only increased. So this means that jails and prisons have become the largest providers of mental health in our country, which creates huge problems, including limited or no access to medication or other responsive therapies upon release. So thousands of untreated, traumatized people are hitting the streets with no safety net, only to find themselves right back where they started. However, in the last few years, a growing body of research suggests that treatment courts can be a successful response to this ineffective over-incarceration of this population. These programs demonstrate public safety through treatment and intensive supervision instead of incarceration, which can then disrupt access to protective factors such as housing, sobriety support, medication, employment, and other pro-social connections. And our graduation and success rate reflects this. As of September 2023, our district, the Northern District of California, which is Salinas all the way to the Oregon border along the coast, our graduation rate across all 3 sites is 70%. Very proud of that. These programs also can offer significant cost savings to the public. The amount varies, but with a lengthy prison sentence, it will cost approximately $400,000 to $500,000 per person to incarcerate. This is saved by supervising our cohort in the community rather than simply warehousing them in a prison. And I'd like to share 2 quotes from you that I thought were very poignant from 2 of our district court judges that are on the team. One is from US District Court Judge Jacqueline Corley. And I asked her, why CAP for you? And she said, I readily agreed to be part of this because of the opportunity to meaningfully change lives while at the same time better protecting our public. And another quote from our other district court judge who had the same prompt, US District Judge William Orrick. He told me, I volunteered for CAP when it was starting out because I liked its focus on rehabilitation. I missed working with social programs that help people, and I had been involved in those since I was in high school. CAP seemed like a really great way to have a positive impact in our justice system. So we heard from them, well, why me? Why am I here today talking to you about CAP? Well, so much of my job is spent within the confines of our adversarial legal system. It's formal, it's scripted. We all know the ending. CAP instead represents an unparalleled opportunity for creativity, for positivity, for collaboration across the system barriers to improve someone's life in real time. This humanizes, it brings the concept of justice down to an individual level. My adage for my role with CAP is, if we don't know it and we don't have it, I will find it. As I am primarily tasked with handling resource referral requests for our participants for a variety of things. I've gotten some very strange requests over the years, but happy to find what I can, such as non-criminal legal referrals like child custody or immigration, housing support, pro-social activities. I have found a soccer league in the past. I found a laptop for a client so they could attend school. I found a free child custody attorney last week and have also found some great online fatherhood classes. And this work really just intersects perfectly with one of my biggest motivators that draws me to it. I have always wanted to help people and be of service. I'm also drawn in because of my lived experience with sobriety, mental illness, and incarceration. Each of these has directly impacted me, my immediate family, and my core friend group. When I was a kid and a young adult, I wasn't able to help my loved ones with these struggles. Now I can offer it. I can offer to walk alongside. Learning to navigate, adapt, and heal in my own life from these experiences brings a degree of compassion, empathy, and authenticity to help guide me in my work with the justice involved. And I would like to just share a short story with you. In a recent CAP session, 2 different participants said something very interesting. They said their federal cases were the best thing that ever happened to them. I think we were all stunned speechless, which is saying a lot when you're at a table full of judges, but no one really had anything to say at first. And the first person to recover was actually our therapist, who said, "Why?" One of them said it was because it forced him to really look at himself. The other one was much more direct and said if he hadn't gotten a federal case, he'd be dead. Well, the first participant who said that CAP really forced him to look at himself is the story that I'd like to share. So he told the team about his upcoming holiday plans. This was right around Thanksgiving. And he told us that after being incarcerated for the majority of his daughter's lives, he had started reconnecting with them while he was in CAP. He began working for Urban Alchemy, which is an organization that has partnered with the city of San Francisco to provide support and security and outreach to those experiencing homeless and addiction. So Thanksgiving is approaching, and he asks his daughters, now in their late teens, "Well, what do you girls want to do for the holiday?" They said, "Dad, we don't want to do anything. We just want to make food with you to give out on the streets where you work." So the 3 of them cooked all day in his tiny little apartment kitchen, foil-wrapped dozens of meals, and they handed them out in the most vulnerable spaces in the city. After sharing the story with the CAP team, he told us it felt good to give back because he had to take for so long. And now he was able to help others. Both of these participants' comments about their federal cases really resonates with me. The interventions and support that the CAP team is ready to provide to those who are open to receiving it can not only protect a life, but improve it, assisting someone to live instead of just to survive, to give what we can, that change is possible, that investment in people is meaningful and worthwhile, and that when we heal individuals, we heal communities. Thank you for having me here today. I get a little bit emotional talking about this. But that is a very brief overview of a really amazing project that we have. We're hoping that this spreads into other federal districts. Shockingly, they're very common in the state system, but the federal court system does not have many of these. So if you enjoyed today's presentation, feel free to talk it up to other people. You can use it to maybe inform some voting decisions, some donations you might be considering. If there's sober living environments that are being suggested that for your area and in your neighborhoods, please be open to receiving them. They provide a home for many people who are transitioning out of some very dark places. And if there's time, I was going to say I could take questions, but I have not been keeping time at all. Yeah, are there any questions that I can answer for anyone? Yes.
I think most of us are aware that when the state mental health...
The question was after the closure of, well, actually completely dismantling our mental health system in the 70s, and sort of the promise through some legislation and some earmarked funding down the line that we were going to have these great community mental health resources available, and that hasn't really materialized. Sort of based off of my own experience and training, what do I sort of see as a potential future in that? And that is a very difficult question, I think, because there are a lot of really great providers that are out there, they just experience a lot of really high turnover, and they struggle with securing funding from year to year, right? Most of the funding that is earmarked for a lot of these organizations, they have to continually apply for, and they're often only good for a year, maybe 2 years. And I think that's sort of where my offhanded comment about making different voting decisions might be helpful, looking for candidates who have a clear mindset for developing community resources. And I think we have, as a state, we have passed, with AB 109 and realignment, some really great legislation that actually did lead to some positive change in terms of bolstering our community service that was available, because they just got more money, frankly. And they were able to hire staff, and they were able to retain staff. But it's sort of query how long that lasts, right? And I don't honestly have a very good answer other than that, which is that I hope that that continues. And I think there is a really great conversation that's going on across the state, but definitely within the criminal justice system, about the importance of putting our weight behind those community resources, because we rely on them as well. And there's a lot more DOJ funding from Department of Justice, federal funding, that is now becoming more available for some community resource providers. And as to your specific sort of locality question for Santa Rosa, Sonoma County is within the Northern District that I practice in, but I have noticed that there's not a lot here. Yeah, I mean, right, no, the jail is never an ideal place for these types of things. And I think that the state is really at a point of having a large reckoning with a population that can't be contained in the systems that we have in place right now. And I'm just optimistic that with, again, those voting decisions, that you'll just continue to keep that little bit trickle of funding coming through for those programs. Thank you.
I have some information. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt.
No, thank you, Gretchen.
Some of the people in this church are aware. I'm a member. I go to the Wellness and Advocacy Center. I have the phone number. If anybody wants to know any information, we built some
Okay.
buildings up.
Thank you so much, Gretchen. I really appreciate you sharing all that information. Thank you. Yes.
I just wanted to express appreciation for what you're doing in the program.
Thank you. That's very kind. Thank you. Yes, Mom. Okay.
Can you say how many of these CAP programs there are in the federal system? Because I'm guessing there aren't very many, and I don't know why that is.
Yeah, so the last count, which, oh, sorry, yes. How many CAP program or CAP program-like are there in the federal system across the US? They have not updated the count since 2019, so my figures are a little bit outdated. But for the specific program, which this is a post-plea, pre-sentence program, there's 44. Right, so as I mentioned, it varies pretty wildly on what your, yes, what, I will not be asked back. So the question was, can I address what their sentences would have been if they had not been adjudicated, and what they would be if they graduate CAP? So it depends and very much on what you're charged with at the outset, but very rarely are federal sentences less than a handful of years, especially with a lot of these clients who often have significant criminal history already. The penalties can go up. And the penalties also go up if you have a certain quantity of drugs. So for our drug cases, the baseline is about 5 years. It can kind of just only increase from there. So most of our participants, I would say, if they were sentenced in that normal adjudication, would probably be within 3 to 9 years. And so with successful completion of our program, most people, and I say most because it depends on the details of the plea agreement that you as a defendant enter into, but most of them get a no-time sentence. You still sustain a felony, but you don't have any custody time. Yeah, yes?
I also want to mention, just
changes the mental health funding model, the MHSA funding, potentially. And I don't have an opinion one way or the other because I can't decide what I think on it, but people should look closely at that because if it passes, housing funding will be increased greatly, but it will pull from the current providers.
Okay.
It's a statewide proposition that's going to change the face of mental health services significantly if it passes. So, more housing is good.
Okay. Thank you. So yeah, we all need to read our ballots. Yes. But yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, read measure 1 closely, or proposition 1. Excuse me. Correct. Yeah. Well, thank you, everyone. I will be available for a few minutes after. Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, this is a really broad question.
Okay.
Guess I probably shouldn't even be asking issues that so many experience in this community.
That is a very big question. Yeah. Why, yes, sort of why does the U.S. not put more emphasis on the importance of mental health in the criminal justice system? Yeah, I mean, I think, culturally we have very much been a country of penalty and treating, adjudicating everything through that lens. And I think in doing that, we have definitely tried to incarcerate our way out of a lot of problems, which of course is not a thing. So I do think that there is a very real ethos challenge there. But I would say just in the rooms that I have been in the last few years, I go to conferences on a lot of these courts and kind of other intervention models. There's a lot more conversation happening and a recognition that overwhelmingly there has been, a series of populations that have been just warehoused for decades and, disproportionately impacting communities of color and people with substance use and mental health issues, and trying to figure out a way to better address that. And so these courts are kind of just one way to not only be part of that change in conversation, but to actually do something. And to try to, have these kinds of conversations in these kinds of spaces all over, because, these are people that are part of all of our communities. They might be your brother or your mom or your friend, and, you have to find a space where all of that can exist and that people can be people and that we can help support that change. So, on that note, thank you so much for having me.